This is a rare Ethiopian Orthodox Bible manuscript, handwritten in Ethiopia's sacred liturgical language, Ge'ez. It's 52 leaves, 102 pages carefully preserved and written by the scribes who devoted their very lives to this work.
Something happened in the ancient prophecies, and it was never meant to be read outside Ethiopia. A few weeks ago, something quietly slipped out of one of the most protected religious traditions on earth, and scholars still don't know what to do with it. Ethiopian Orthodox monks, the same guardians of ancient manuscripts hidden in stone monasteries for over 1,000 years, allowed an apocalypse passage from their 81-book Bible, predicting the events of 2026 to be translated and released to the outside world. But this isn't the apocalypse story you've heard before. Not the four horsemen, not the mark of the beast, not the usual fire and brimstone. This is something else entirely, something deeper, something darker, something unsettling. Because this passage doesn't just describe the end of the world, it describes what will unfold in 2026, what will change the fate of humanity, the purpose of the soul, and the warning about a deception so convincing it would appear as salvation itself. And top scientists are now alarmed by how precisely it matches current global events. And if you're drawn to hidden truths like this, make sure to like the video and subscribe, because what comes next only gets more disturbing. Now, here's the part that should already have your full attention. The Bible these monks have been guarding doesn't have 66 books, not even 73. It has 81. And those extra books aren't minor additions. They contain some of the most explosive spiritual texts ever preserved. Writings that were removed, hidden, or never included in Western Christianity long before most people even knew they existed. And before we reveal what this translation actually says about 2026, hit like and subscribe, because this is the kind of knowledge some people don't want you hearing. And you must need to understand what kind of Bible it came from. Because once you do, everything else starts to feel very different. For nearly 2,000 years, monks deep in the Ethiopian highlands preserved a version of Scripture that the West simply does not have. Books like Enoch, Jubilees, and Maccabees, texts that early Christians revered and read openly, were quietly dropped during the great church councils of the 4th and 5th centuries. Ethiopia never agreed to those edits. They kept everything. And we're not talking about fringe documents here. In 2010, radiocarbon dating of the Gara Gospels discovered in an Ethiopian monastery proved they were written between 330 and 650 AD, making them the oldest illustrated Christian manuscripts ever found on earth. While Europe was in chaos, Ethiopian monks were sitting in stone rooms, carefully preserving Christianity's original source code. Now, the book that Western scholars spent centuries dismissing as mythology is the Book of Enoch. And the moment you read it, you understand exactly why it was removed. Enoch doesn't just say humanity sinned before the flood. It explains the mechanics of how things went wrong. It describes 200 watcher angels, celestial beings who descended to earth, took human wives, and produced hybrid offspring, called the Nephilim, giants who consumed and corrupted the world. It names them individually: Samiaza, Azazel, Barakiel. It says these beings didn't just rebel, they taught forbidden knowledge to humanity: weapon-making, sorcery, astrology, the manipulation of the physical world. This wasn't simple disobedience. It was an unauthorized transfer of power, and the Roman Church wanted nothing to do with it, because the world Enoch describes is one where spiritual authority is decentralized, dangerous, and completely outside institutional control. So it was cut. Ethiopia kept it. But Enoch is just the beginning, because there's another book inside that 81-book Bible. And the apocalypse passage that just surfaced came directly from it: the 40 hidden days, what the risen Christ actually taught. It's called the Mashafah Kaden, the Book of the Covenant. In Western tradition, the 40 days between the resurrection and the ascension get about 3 paragraphs, a few appearances, a few words of comfort, and then Jesus is gone. But in the Ethiopian Mashafah Kaden, those 40 days are the entire point. This is the main event. This is where the real teaching happens. And what he teaches is nothing like what was left in the standard Gospels. According to this text, The risen Christ gathers his disciples not to comfort them, but to prepare them for the final war, specifically naming the year 2026 as the climax of the Great Deception. And the first thing he does is name the enemy. He calls it the builder of shadows. He describes the material world, money, status, empire, political power, as the primary playground of a deceptive force. A builder, something that constructs false realities so convincing that most people never question them, realities that will reach their peak in 2026. And then he says something that should stop you cold. He tells his disciples directly, "Do not build temples of stone, for the stone will crumble in the year of shadows. Build the temple of the heart, for it is eternal." Now, in the context of a nice Sunday sermon, that sounds like a lovely metaphor. But in the Mashafakeddin, it's a literal command. He is warning them that organized religion and technology will become the enemy. He predicts with haunting specificity that in 2026, men will wear long robes and use his name to accumulate gold through digital illusions. He specifically warns against a future system that will turn his cross into a sword of total control. The specificity is what unsettles scholars most. It reads less like prophecy and more like someone who has seen the AI revolutions, the digital empires, and the global control grids, and is describing them in advance. He tells the disciples that the true believer must become a stranger to the systems of men, but then he goes further. He introduces a concept that sounds almost biological. He says, every human being has two winds blowing through them, the wind of life and the wind of error. The wind of error isn't described as bad choices or moral failure. It is described like a parasite. It enters through greed. It enters through the eyes when they look at what they shouldn't. It enters through the mouth when it speaks things that aren't true. And once it gets inside, it calcifies the heart. It turns a breathing, walking, functioning human being into what he calls a walking tomb. Think about that phrase for a moment. A walking tomb. A person who is physically alive, who eats, sleeps, works, and scrolls through their phone, but spiritually has already gone hollow. He's not describing sinners. He's describing most of modern civilization in 2026. And then almost mercifully, he gives them the antidote. It is gnosis, direct knowledge. He tells them to watch their own thoughts the way a guard watches a city gate, examining everything that tries to enter. He tells them the kingdom of heaven is not above the clouds. It is inside the human body, hidden in the silence between thoughts. This is exactly why Rome had to bury this text. Because if ordinary people believed God lived inside them, rather than in an institution, the entire structure of religious and political power collapses overnight. And then comes the line that researchers keep coming back to. The line that, frankly, is the most disturbing sentence in the entire passage. He tells them, "The darkness will come, and it will wear my face." He is not warning them about obvious evil. He is warning them that the most dangerous deception in human history will arrive in 2026, looking exactly like salvation. It will carry his name. It will speak his words. It will build cathedrals in his honor. And it will be the thing trying to destroy everything he actually stood for. But the text also contains something else, something stranger. Alongside the spiritual teaching, the Mashafakeddin contains cosmological details that have no business being there. He speaks of the storehouses of snow and the gates of the winds, describing atmospheric patterns as if they were physical structures. For centuries, people assumed this was poetic language. Then modern meteorology confirmed that global weather moves in massive current systems, literal rivers of wind flowing at high altitude around the entire planet. The text was describing something real. He also speaks of a great abyss of water beneath the earth. In 2014, scientists discovered a vast reservoir of water locked inside ringwoodite rock deep within the Earth's mantle, containing more water than all surface oceans combined. The abyss of water beneath us is real. If the text was accurate about the water and accurate about the winds, the question worth sitting with is this: what else in that passage is accurate? What about the exact timeline it gives for the final events in 2026? That's where scientists are now openly alarmed. Now, here's where the story expands beyond manuscripts and into something even harder to explain. You cannot understand Ethiopia's role in all of this without confronting the Ark of the Covenant. While Indiana Jones pointed to Egypt, Ethiopian tradition has always been calm and consistent on this point. The Ark is in Aksum. It has been there for nearly 3,000 years. It sits inside the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion, guarded by a single monk who is appointed for life and forbidden from ever leaving the chapel grounds. Visitors who have come close to the guardian over the years report something disturbing. These men develop cataracts. Their skin pales. They often die unusually young, one monk after another, living out their final years in physical deterioration from proximity to whatever is inside that building. The biblical descriptions of the Ark paint a picture that sounds less like a religious artifact and more like some form of high-energy technology. It burned armies. It killed men who touched it without authorization. The effects described thousands of years ago read like radiation exposure. The story of how it arrived in Ethiopia traces back to the Queen of Sheba, her visit to Solomon, the birth of their son Menelik I, and Menelik's eventual return to Jerusalem. According to Ethiopia's royal chronicle, the Kebra Nagast, Menelik and his companions replaced the Ark with a replica and carried the original home to Ethiopia. And Ethiopia, unlike every civilization that has tried to take it since, has never lost it. Ethiopia is also notably the only African nation that was never successfully colonized. When Italy invaded in 1896 with modern firearms and artillery, Ethiopian forces defeated them decisively at the Battle of Adwa. Historians still debate the exact mechanics of how an army with older weapons routed a modern European military force. Local accounts mention the Ark being brought near the battlefield, a light, a turning point no one can fully explain. The Knights Templar knew about all of this. They traveled to Ethiopia in the 12th century specifically seeking the Ark. Their symbols are still carved into the stone walls of Lalibela. They understood that the Holy Grail wasn't a cup. It was a bloodline, and the Ark was its physical proof, the churches that shouldn't exist. Speaking of Lalibela, if you've never heard of it, prepare yourself. In the 12th century, King Lalibela didn't build 11 churches. He carved them directly downward into solid volcanic rock, not caves with some shaping. Fully formed cathedrals complete with columns, windows, doorways, drainage systems, and interior rooms, all cut from a single continuous piece of stone, a negative sculpture. You don't add anything. You remove everything that isn't the church, and one wrong cut destroys the entire structure permanently. Modern engineers have calculated that completing 11 of these structures using hand tools in 24 years, which is the traditional timeline given, would have required 40,000 workers and well over a century. And the rock that was removed, millions of tons of volcanic debris, simply doesn't exist. There are no spoil heaps, no evidence of where it went. The local explanation carried across 800 years of oral tradition is that human workers built during the day and angels continued through the night, working twice as fast, using tools of light. Now, whatever you believe about angels, the engineering anomaly is real, and when you cross-reference it with references in the Mashafa Kaden to knowledge of frequencies and the manipulation of matter, a different kind of explanation starts to form, one that involves sound, resonance, and technologies that predate our current civilization by thousands of years. The Church of St. George, the most famous of the 11, is shaped as a perfect cross sunk into the earth. Its drainage system has functioned flawlessly for 800 years through torrential seasonal rains. Beneath the entire complex runs a network of tunnels in complete darkness, used for priestly initiation, navigated blind while chanting. The architecture physically enacts the theology of the Book of the Covenant. To reach the light, you must first walk through the darkness. It's not a metaphor, it's a building. Recent 3D laser scans of the site revealed hollow chambers beneath the floors that haven't been opened in 8 centuries. No one knows what's inside them. The bloodline that changes everything. And beneath all of this, running through the books, the Ark, and the stone churches, is a bloodline claim that Western Christianity has never known what to do with. Ethiopia's Solomonic dynasty ruled for nearly 3,000 years from roughly 1900 BC until 1974. One continuous royal line, 225 emperors. The last of them, Haile Selassie, carried the official title Conquering Lion of the Tribe of Judah. That is not a poetic nickname. It is a legal declaration of descent from King David himself. If Mary belonged to the house of David, and Ethiopian kings claimed the same lineage, then the relationship between Jesus and the Ethiopian throne is not symbolic. It's familial. Modern genetics has added weight to this. DNA studies of Ethiopian populations have identified ancient Levantine markers, genetic material from the region of modern Israel and Syria, dating back approximately 3,000 years, precisely matching the timeline of the Kebra-Nagas migration story. The legends map onto real population movement. This is why Ethiopian Christianity never had to be converted. They weren't outsiders who adopted the faith. They were already insiders. They kept the Saturday Sabbath. They practiced circumcision on the 8th day. Their dietary laws mirror the Old Testament almost exactly. Their faith is what Christianity might have looked like before Rome got involved. And in the remote highlands, oral traditions still carry a story about a teacher who came from the north, a healer, a man of unusual peace. They don't call him by the name you'd expect. They call him the righteous teacher. Whether that's a parallel tradition, a corrupted memory, or something else entirely, is a question worth sitting with. As the monks themselves say, the West has the water, we have the well. Why these texts are surfacing right now, which brings us to the question that ties all of this together. Why now? These manuscripts survived insects, wars, invasions, and centuries of deliberate isolation. Monks in remote mountain monasteries kept them wrapped in goatskin, inaccessible to outsiders, for over a millennium. Then, within the space of a few years, unauthorized translations begin circulating. Digital copies spread faster than any institution can suppress them. The apocalypse passage from the Mashafa Kedan lands in your feed between a news clip and a meme. That's not a coincidence, at least not according to the texts themselves. The most striking section of the Mashafa Kedan describes the end times, using a phrase that in the original language translates roughly as an age of wedges of illusion, a hyperconnected world where people communicate without physical voices and see without physical eyes, a world that is dense with information but starved of truth. The text states that when humanity is fully lost inside false realities, the hidden knowledge will be released not as a reward, but as an emergency measure, a break glass in case of fire protocol, written into the text itself. Time to activate when the conditions match, and it explicitly names the year 2026 as the turning point. Look around. Trust in governments is at historic lows. Faith in media is collapsing. Organized religion is hemorrhaging members faster than at any point in modern history. And millions of people carry a quiet, persistent feeling that the version of reality they were handed doesn't quite add up, that something important was left out, that the story they were told was the simplified version, or worse, the controlled version. The Ethiopian texts validate that feeling with 2,000 years of receipts. The Council of Nicaea didn't just streamline the Bible for clarity. If the Ethiopian tradition is correct, they removed the sections that described human beings as powerful, spiritually capable agents in an active cosmic conflict. They replaced that framework with one where humans are weak, sinful, and dependent on institutional mediation to access God. The Mashafa Kedan describes it differently. It describes people as temples, as guardians, as participants in a war being fought at the level of consciousness itself. By removing those books, the argument goes, the West didn't just lose some extra chapters, it lost its armor. And Ethiopia never handed theirs over, so now you have it. The manuscript, the 40-day teaching, the walking tomb, the builder of shadows, the ark guarded by dying monks, the churches that physics cannot fully explain, the bloodline that connects David to Selassie in an unbroken chain. And an apocalypse passage that wasn't released because someone finally got permission. It was released because, according to the text itself, it was always supposed to be released at exactly this moment, right before the events of 2026 unfold. Whether that unsettles you or excites you, Probably depends on how much of the story you were already questioning. The monks kept the full version. The question now is whether you're ready to read it. Hit like if this opened something for you and subscribe because we're only getting deeper from here.